Good morning, history hankers. I've made it to one of the southern tips of Jordan, to a place that has lived in the imagination of ancient and the new men. This place always fascinated me. I've been here once. This is my second time, and I'll probably come here again and again and again. The place is called Petra. It's probably the most recognized tourist destination in the world. I think most of the tourists, I would say 90% tourists that come to Jordan, come to visit Petra. Now, because we history hankers, we need to understand the history and the etymology and all that. We're not just the normal tourists who sit in restaurants and eat shawarmas and make videos of that. So as some of you will know, the word Petra, what does that mean? Petra. You remember when Jesus, his first 4 disciples were the fishermen from Galilee, and one of them, the most faithful, he said, "He is the rock on which my ministry will be established." His words were, "He is the Petra on which my ministry will be established." And from that day, the disciple of Jesus was being called Petra, or then became anglicized to Peter. So Petra means rock. Like people from Indo-Pak subcontinent would be familiar with the word patthar or patthar, which means a stone or a pebble. So Petra means rock, a city made of rocks. Interesting etymology. Other than that, this city was made by the Nabateans about 3,190 years, somewhere there, 3,200 years ago. As a city in the middle of the desert, because it lied on a caravan route. Caravans would pass, as I said before, from Mecca, Yemen, all the way to Syria. This was on the path. And they offered them shelter here, accommodation here, food here, and the most important resource in the desert is water. And that's how this city became prosperous, rich, extremely rich. It became like arrogantly rich. And then with the advent of the sea route, it slowly withered away, wilted away, and got lost in the midst of the time. Yeah, so as I was telling you that this, with the advent of the sea route, the city got wilted, got forgotten, got deserted. People left it, and then it disappeared. And it disappeared for next 1,000 or 2,000 years. It only was left in the imagination, some parables, some stories, and some scriptures, and there was nothing left otherwise. People didn't know that those times, obviously, there were no videos, WhatsApps, cameras, so there was no evidence left of the city. This modern Petra was discovered in 19th century, and we owe this discovery to a Swiss explorer. His name was Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. Now, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, as I said, was a Swiss explorer. He was a student of history, archaeology, things that we are into. And he read through some ancient scriptures and ancient records that there lies a city in the Middle East, which is beautiful, almost like a fairy land. He wanted to explore that city. He wanted to find out. But at that time, this place was inhabited by very hostile Bedouin tribes. They would protect Petra like a valuable possession. They would not allow anyone to enter. And the reason, because they thought there were treasures here. And anybody from outside coming is actually looking for those treasures. And they have previously, anyone attempted to enter Petra, they would kill that person. But Johann Ludwig was a true explorer, a true adventurer. He didn't give up. You know what he did? He converted to Islam. He learned Arabic. He named himself Sheikh Ibrahim Abdullah. He grew a beard. He read Quran, fiqh, hadith, all the Islamic subjects. And then along with his servant, he made his journey towards this land. Took him months and maybe more than years, he got into this land. And whichever Arab tribe or Bedouin tribe he came across, he told them that his main desire is to offer a sacrifice at the tomb of Aaron, Harun in Arabic, who's buried up here in the mountain in Petra. And they would allow him because they thought he's a Muslim and he's on a pilgrim. And he managed to get here. And he managed to get to that mountain which is called Jabal Harun, or Mountain of Aaron. He sacrificed a lamb. And then he came back. And then he wrote a narrative of his travel, of his itinerary, which introduced the world to Petra. Johann Ludwig was a European, a Swiss explorer. He was not used to this hostile desert weather. So when he got back to Cairo, he got acutely ill with dysentery and fever and hell knows what. There he died at the age of 32. And is buried there. If any of you explorer who really loves exploring and respect explorer must go to his grave and pay a homage to a great explorer who discovered and gave the city back to us, which was lost in the mist of time. He's buried in Old Cairo. There's a place called Nasri Bagh, or Nasri Garden. There's an old cemetery there. And on the eastern end of that cemetery is the grave of Sheikh Abdullah Ibrahim, or Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, the person who gave us Petra. So now what we have entered is called the Siq, S-I-Q, or canyon. The canyon was the entrance to the natural gateway to the city of Petra. And as I entered here, I've definitely felt a drop in temperature, maybe 4, 5, 6 degrees. It's like cold in here. Why Petra became so popular or became so successful as a city or as a civilization or as an inhabitant? Because they mastered one thing that was extremely rare in this hostile environment, and that was rain collection, the usage or management of water. And I'll show you how they managed it. You see this little gutter here, or this little rain here, that's where they would collect the rainwater, and it would go downhill, down the Siq or the canyon into the city where there were reservoirs that would collect the water and supply the city. Quite ingenious for 3,100 or 3,200 years old. And the Siq, so you walk in this canyon, and I've done it once before, so I'm not going to be as enthralled as some people going in for the first time. But the moment you enter Petra, the first view completely baffles you. You're completely mesmerized with the beauty of the place. I'm going to show you once we get there. So this Siq, or this canyon that we walked through, is about roughly 1.2 kilometers. And anybody who's come to the Petra for the first time will tell you the first view of the Petra is where the Siq ends, and you get the view of the monastery, or the treasury as they call it, or khazana in Arabic, meaning treasury. It's probably one of the best views you'll ever have. No amount of reading, seeing pictures, even YouTube will ever prepare you for this view, to see how crafty, how astute, how skilled those ancient civilizations were. I don't think so anywhere in this part, with all the architectural marvelance and the tools and the laser precision, can produce this. Isn't it majestic? This is the famous treasury, or in Arabic they call it khazina. Actually, it's not a treasury. This is actually a tomb, like most of the places in Petra are tombs. The ancient people, like living there, the Bedouin tribes who were living in this area, always thought that for it to be so grandiose, it must be hiding something, and what must be hiding is some treasure, some trove, some gold or whatever. I show you at the top these little urns that you see at the top, this earthen clay tomb, the pots. Ancient Bedouins thought that there was gold in here, gold coins hidden. So they would shoot from gun from the bottom so it would open. Obviously nothing came out. It was just an ornament. It was just a carving.
You want to go by camera, right?
I don't think so. I'm seeing it for the second time and I'm as awestruck as I was the first time. Imagine this is not constructed. It's carved out of the rock. Carved. The proper word may be hewn out of the rock. Using, I don't know what it they use. Hammer, chisels, spades. I have no idea. But to get this out of a spade or a chisel or a hammer, you get the best artisan in the world and give him a rock and ask him to produce this. This is better than a laser precision. This is better than any advanced architect. This is mind-blowing. This is magic. So the people whom you've seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark would remember that famous scene when Sean Connery and Harrison Ford come out running from the horses. That's about the only movie that was ever allowed to be shot here. And as I said before, this was actually not a treasure. There was no treasure hidden here. It was a tomb of one of the kings of Petra. You're not allowed to enter here, otherwise I would have taken an insult. This place is always full of tourists. There's all kind of services available. You want to ride a camel, a donkey, or a horse for people who are unfit, cannot travel, because it's quite extensive. It's believed that only 10 to 15% of the Petra has been excavated. 85 to 19% is still buried in these rocks or under the sand or something. And as we go further into Petra, I'm going to try and give you some of the religious history of this place as well. So we had a bit of a official Western history of Petra. Obviously there's a religious part to it as well. It comes from this land where all the three Abrahamic faiths were born. The deserts of the Middle East. So religiously, or by Arab history, Petra was built by Nabateans. The Nabateans were the descendant of two earlier Arabic civilizations, the Ads and the Thamuds. Ads and the Thamuds perished. The appointed prophet for Ad and Thamud was Prophet Hud. The Prophet Hud doesn't have an English name. He doesn't have an English name because he's one of the four Arab prophets, so he's not mentioned in the earlier scriptures like the Bible or the Torah. The four other three are Saleh, Shuaib, and Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. So the appointed prophet here was, for the Nabateans, was Prophet Saleh. The Prophet Saleh, as I said before, is one of the Arab prophets who was not mentioned in the earlier scriptures. Now, interestingly, as I said, these people, the Nabateans, were master dwellers and master planners. The way they planned the city, the way they harnessed water, the rainwater to sustain the city. And they built a similar city in Saudi Arabia, which is called Al-Hagar, or in Arabic, or commonly it's known as Madain Saleh. Now, Madain is probably a misnomer for that place, because as we know in Arabic, Medina means city and Madain is a plural, so Madain means cities of Saleh. I think what it should refer to the two cities, the Petra here and Al-Hagar in Saudi Arabia, because those were the two cities built by the nation of Saleh, may peace be upon him. So collectively they should be called Madain Saleh, the cities of Saleh, or the people of Saleh, cities by the people of Saleh. This was obviously more advanced, I think more cosmopolitan, more I think commercially viable, because more trade routes were going through this way. And at the time when it was at the apex or at the zenith of its existence, it is said the population of Petra was about 30 to 40,000 people. That's huge. 3,001 years ago, it's like probably having a population of, in today's time, something like 10 million or 12 million, a huge, proper cosmopolitan. And then, as I said, with the advent of the sea route trading, the caravans stopped coming here. So people slowly moved out. The city got deserted and got lost in the mist of time till it was rediscovered by the great explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt in the later parts of the 19th century. So many of the buildings that the carvings that you see that were carved or hewn out of the rocks are not. There are very few of them, or rather, there's hardly any residential quarters. Most of them are tombs, and some are places of worship. And obviously the tombs are of notables from that civilization. I mean, no one makes a tomb for ordinary men like me. So all these little holes, that crevices, that entrances are mainly tombs. People were buried here. And this civilization lasted many years, many hundreds of years. So they must have had, I don't know, 25, 30 kings. And that's all they buried here. The first one that we see, which is mistakenly called the Khazana, is probably the most important king, or the king that reigned the longest. That's his tomb. And this place, I think, Petra, you can come at any time. I want to show you something. Interesting. Now, this picture here is one of the pictures that initially got me attracted to Petra. You see there, it's written there, married to a Bedouin. It's a very interesting story. This woman, Margaret, came as a tourist in 1970s, like we all do, to Petra. At that time, the Bedouins were still living in the caves here, because caves are a natural dwelling, as I always said. And then she fell in love with a Bedouin by the name of Muhammad, and she ended up marrying him. And interestingly, when she married him, she moved to the cave where Muhammad was living. I think he had a curious shop, like many other shops that you see here. And she lived with him for many years, and then later they moved to a little hamlet, a little house. Muhammad died, the Bedouin died, I think 20 years after the marriage. But that woman, I believe, is still alive. And then she wrote this book, Married to a Bedouin, and you must read it. It's an expansive, research-based and personal experience-based book on the local Bedouin cultures, life in Petra in the 70s when they were living in caves. And for a Kiwi nurse, she was a nurse by profession, moving from her luxurious or comfortable living in Auckland to here in these caves. One of these caves, she lived. They had children, and then she became like an Arab. Her children were all married off. And after her husband passed away, then she opened a clinic, because she was a nurse by profession for the local people, and that's where she has lived all her life. In one of these caves, married to a Bedouin, coming from first world and coming here all the way and spend the rest of her life here. So this is one of the Roman amphitheaters. Must have been built in the Roman times, so that is ancient, maybe 2,000 years ago, when this land was overtaken by the Romans.
Thank you.
We have to go that way.
Oh, we have to.
So, I've been to many ancient cities out of my idiosyncrasies, and obviously, I've been to the one in Saudi Arabia as well, the Al Haga, and it's also beautiful. I mean, it's just like to carve something out of a stone is remarkable. You get many places like in Europe, in America, in Africa, South America, but nothing as advanced as this. the city system, the water management, and the success of this civilization was. And that's why it still stands, because it was not constructed. It was carved out of stone. So that's why it survived all the earthquakes and the weather adversaries, everything. It still stands today. All the tombs, all the amphitheaters, and as we march on, I'm going to show you something more interesting. You know, one thing I must admit, being here second time now and having toured Petra quite extensively, is the local Bedouins here, or the local shopkeepers or whatever. These are probably the posterity of the same people that lived in the caves 100, 100, 200, 300 years ago. So for them, it's now obviously it's become the most famous, or it's one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. And these people have evolved into masterful salespeople. I mean, there's just a guy I met. He said namaste to me. I didn't reply. Then he looked at me. He said Sat Sri Akal, which is a Sikh greeting. I kept on looking at him. Then he looked at me and asked me, "Are you Muslim?" I said, "Yes, I am." Then he said, "Salaam alaikum." And then they've learned this little trade. They work out looking at you, and they, like all touts or the schemers or the good, astute shop sellers, have first try and make a personal contact with you, in your language, greeting you in your language or whatever. And this is what they have evolved masterfully here. Outside Petra, the Jordanian people are extremely friendly, helpful. They would go out of their way to help you. They would stop, they would give you a lift, they will even pay for you. But here, the whole commercial psychology sets in. And it's just because it's become so touristy. It's people from everywhere. It's a very successful commercial hub, and you get all kind of merchandise that is available here. You get those coins from ancient eras that are here, and you get different kind of relics, knives, pottery, then the usual your headgears like the one I'm wearing, the traditional Jordanian style. And these people, they're just so good, such good sellers. I mean, obviously I've been to more than 100 countries, and I'm very well aware of this chicanery, this commercial psychology, how it's being applied, how the game of a good cop and a bad cop is played between your guide and the shopkeeper when he takes you for a special deal, and the commission he gets. We all of us who have traveled are very well aware of that. But somehow these people, the Bedouin here, have got a way around it. The Europeans, and I would say here, as I walk in now, I would say 80% tourists are Europeans, few Asians, and no other African except me. And Europeans are usually very, very astute, they're very aware of all these things because they travel a lot. And so they don't usually fall for this kind of gimmickry and this kind of commercial traps. But here I've seen many of them falling for it. Maybe a camel ride, a donkey ride, a photograph at a view, or just a tour guide, a camel ride, whatever. And I think it's just the sheer volume of the tourists that have given those local people a collective institutional experience. They've become masterful salespeople. So when you come in here, be very careful. You'll be offered a donkey ride. No, but it's included in your ticket. So he gets you mount the donkey or the horse or whatever, and once you get to your destination, then the argument starts. And you cannot get out of this argument without paying him something. So be careful. Most of the coins that you see that are being sold here as 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, from the time of Ad, the Thamud, the Nabateans, are just coins that were probably 80 years old or 100 years old, that are left buried in the sand for like 3 months to give them that archaic, dusty, old look, and then they are sold at a ridiculous price. And I've seen many experienced tourists falling victim to that trap. So just be careful. Just wanted to warn you. Now I walked through the city, and now, as I said, this city that we've come to the end of the city, or Petra city, or the non-Petra city. And as I said, the archaeologists believe this is probably only 10% of what has been excavated. The other 90% still lies buried in these rocks or under the ground. The excavations are carrying on. But I'm going to show you something interesting here, which says a lot about Petra. Now, if you look at this, the ruins of a castle here on my left, this is believed to be the castle of one of the daughters of one of the pharaohs from one of the dynasties. As you know, pharaohs, they had like 32 dynasties. So one of the pharaohs at that time married his daughter to the prince here, which says a lot about Petra and what Petra was at that time. Because at that time, the biggest civilization of the empire were the pharaohs. For a pharaoh to marry his daughter here must have meant that this city was very prosperous, had huge amount of wealth, and by that standards of that time and international standing, must have been Petra at that time must have been what Paris is today. So these are the ruins of that castle, which is believed that the pharaoh built that castle as a dowry, I suppose. I don't know if I'm using the right word. As a dowry for his daughter who was married to the prince of Petra, and this is the remains of that castle where the pharaoh's daughter lived. I thought I'll show it to you. Let's carry on. Now we're gonna make a huge physical effort to get to the highest point of Petra. And as you know, like the tradition in the olden times was that the places of worship, like temple, carbuncle, whatever, was built at the highest point. So the place of worship for this area, for Petra, is nowadays called a monastery. And this monastery is built right on top. And we're going to try and get there. It's about 1,000 steps. These here, you see all these mules are there to take people up there who cannot walk 1,000 steps. And I've been offered, starting from 20 JD, which is about $15 for a ride up there, and then eventually, and there's another one. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
All right, how are you, sir? No, I'll walk.
Nice to take you.
No, thanks. So he's offering me another ride. So it started with 20 JD, then he dropped the price to 10 JD, which is like $7. But I insisted I'm going to walk. There's no better experience than walking. So, brave my legs, bless me. Let's start the arduous journey of 1,180 steps to the monastery. And the reason I'm taking you to the monastery is I've been there before. And at that time when I came, I didn't know that what lies in the monastery. I'll tell you when we get there. Another secret of history lies buried there. Stay with me.